Yo, what is up guys, Ghost here, and today we're continuing our helicopter guide for the Nightbird. Today I'll be covering all the various loadouts, which ones are best for any given situation, and how to actually aim effectively and dispatch targets quickly. As always, if you do enjoy the content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future videos. There will be more guides and tutorials to come, so thank you guys for your support. So if we start with the primary weapons here, you've got the miniguns and then you've got the 20mm cannons. If you're a beginner and you're still getting to grips with flying the helicopter, dodging missiles and lock-ons and all of that stuff, well, firstly I recommend watching the previous parts in this tutorial series, but secondly I would consider using the 20mm cannons. Honestly, the miniguns are some of the hardest weapons to aim and be effective with in all of Battlefield 2042, so there is absolutely nothing wrong with using the 20mm cannons, which have a bit of splash damage and are much more forgiving. They do have quite a lot of damage fall off though, so you do need to be relatively close to the target, but you can get away with being much less accurate, although the more accurate you are with them, the higher damage you will do and the faster you'll kill that target. Now the downside here is that they have been heavily nerfed in the past, so you're really only going to have time to take out one, maybe two targets before they'll overheat and you'll have to give them a rest. So with these cannons, it's much more of a sort of hit and run style. However, whilst they don't have the same infantry killing potential as the miniguns, they do have some advantages. Firstly, you can damage heavy vehicles with them like tanks, so you can actually weave them together with the AGMs as your secondary to solo tanks, wildcats, and anything else really, which actually can be a very powerful combination. Now in a heli 1v1, they do have a little drop to them unlike the miniguns, so you will need to aim a little bit above your cursor depending on the range, but one major benefit here is that for the enemy pilot, if you nail him with the 20mm cannons, his aim will actually be thrown all over the place and he'll find it extremely difficult to counter. However, you will overheat them pretty quickly, so just be careful that that doesn't happen. However, the overall better weapon here is definitely the miniguns. These really are the skill cannons of the Nightbird, and if you aim correctly, the time to kill of the miniguns is absolutely insane. It's lightning fast. However, there are some obvious drawbacks to them that I'm going to try and help you to counter. So firstly, they have a spool up time on them, so if you're anticipating a target appearing somewhere, what I like to do is repeatedly spam mouse 1 or trigger if you're on controller and keep them sort of semi-spooled up, so that the second an enemy appears and is in range, you're able to open fire almost instantaneously. And the second and most important thing to understand is the bullet convergence. So you've got two cannons firing here, one on either side of the helicopter, and they are dialed in to converge or cross over each other at a certain specific range, and this is what we like to call the sweet spot, and this is going to be your goal. Unfortunately, there's no way of knowing your exact range from an enemy at all times, but you'll get to feel it more and more with experience. This is the range where your cannons cross over one another right in the middle of that circular reticle. Now as you get further away from the target, spread and damage drop off will become too great and you won't be effective at all, and as you get closer to the target past the sweet spot, your rounds will actually start to land and hit on either side of the target, missing them entirely. So if you want to kill a target as quickly as possible, it's important to understand that sweet spot and hit them with both guns at once. However, that's not to say you can't kill targets at a closer range, but this time you'll only be able to hit them with one cannon. So it will take you slightly longer to kill them, but this is still totally doable. It's just a little bit more tricky. So you're now only going to be using your reticle as a reference point. This is not where your bullets are going to land, and if you make the mistake of trying to aim with the reticle at close range, like I see so many players doing, you won't hit anything. One easy way of learning how far to the left or right of your reticle you need to aim depending on the range is just to fire with your miniguns and see where your shots are landing, and then as they land, just use the yaw to slightly correct your aim. If your target lies to the right of your reticle, use your right gun. If it lies to the left, use the left gun. There really is no quick and easy way to, dial this into your muscle memory other than practice, and the more you practice and get comfortable with different ranges and how much you need to compensate, the better you'll become at guessing exactly where to aim. I do have another video I made some months ago on this specific skill, but it still holds true, so for some more examples and explanations, go and check that one out. Another tip here, I think Silk said, I think he said that Reaps actually said this, is aim twice and fire once. Now, I'm definitely guilty of this, and it's something I'm always trying to remind myself of, but if you start firing at a target before you really zeroed in on them, you alert them to the fact that they are your target, and then they'll start zigzagging all over the place, going prone, crouching, jumping, etc. Anything they can do to make your job more difficult. But if you dial in your aim and your range correctly first, the miniguns have such a fast time to kill that the target won't even be able to react in time. Now, I know it sounds complicated, and quite frankly it is, but it is definitely worth the time and effort because the amount of damage you can do with these miniguns is pretty much only limited by your ability to aim. Oh yeah, this kind of goes without saying as well, but make sure you don't overheat the miniguns either. Now, there is such a thing as rifle aim, and some of you guys may have heard of that, but that is honestly a whole other kettle of fish, and we'll get into that in another video, and, you know, maybe once I've actually learned how to do it myself. Now, that being said, the miniguns cannot do any damage to heavily armoured vehicles. However, they absolutely shred light vehicles and helicopters, so they're great for those heli one-on-ones, and you can even snipe the enemy pilot out of the cockpit pretty easily if you really get your aim dialed in. Okay, moving on, let's talk secondary weapons. So you've got two choices here. You've got rocket pods, and then you've got the AGMs or the air-to-ground missiles. Now, you start off with the rocket pods, and like with the 20mm cannons, there's nothing wrong with using them. They've got, you know, even more splash damage than the 20mm cannon, so if you want a couple of easy kills, this is the way. However, they too have been heavily nerfed, almost up to the point where they aren't really worth using anymore. There's only two situations where I would like to have rocket pods over AGMs. The first is if you have a massive bunch of enemies all grouped up together, you can really do a lot of damage to them with the rocket pods, and then you can finish off what's left of them with, say, the 20mm cannons. But honestly, that doesn't happen very often, especially since you never see Nightbirds in Breakthrough, so, you know, those situations are few and far between. But for that splash damage loadout, that can be quite fun. And the other is actually against air vehicles. The rocket pods will only do minimal damage to heavy ground vehicles like tanks, but they absolutely shred air vehicles, and they're especially useful to burn through the transport helicopters' absolutely massive health pool that they have. You will have to aim and compensate for the drop and for the travel time, but if you can dial in those rocket pods on enemy helicopters, they can really be a game changer in a one-on-one, or like I said, against transports. However, in my opinion, overall, the AGMs are definitely the best choice here. They do 35 damage to heavy ground vehicles, so that means you can do a total of 70 damage, and if you pair them with the 20mm cannons, you can actually solo heavy vehicles. So if you swoop in and you open up with the 20mm cannons, you know, hit that vehicle until they overheat, then fire off two AGMs, and then go back to your cannons again and finish them off, you can solo tanks pretty handily. But since I can kill infantry, aircraft, and light ground vehicles with the miniguns, to me it just makes the most sense to pair them with AGMs so that I can also deal with tanks and wildcats and all of that stuff. Now, you do only get 2 shots, so, you know, if you do 70 damage to a tank and you've got the miniguns, you'll have to wait for a lengthy reload, at which point the tank will most likely have repaired. However, if you run Crawford or Boris and you take an M5 launcher, you can actually seat switch to the passenger seat and hit them with an M5 shot right after you land your 2 AGMs. Now, this is a pretty risky move. It does take some skill. You know, your heli is going to be drifting through the air as you do this, of course, so you're definitely susceptible to missiles, tank shots, and all of that. But my god, does it feel good when you actually accomplish this. So in conclusion here, if you're still learning movement and evasion and all of that good stuff, you're not worrying too much about being an efficient killing machine, then feel free to start off with the 20mm cannons and the rocket pods, but the end goal here, I feel, should definitely be the miniguns and AGMs. So I hope you guys found this video useful. If you have any questions, drop them below. If you like the video, leave a like, of course subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content and you want more of this, and I'll see you guys in the next one.